or needed in the future. Ms. Broyles?
That's my question first. I'm not aware of restrictions on having, people rent your rooms or, for short periods of time, like during Frontier Days, things like that. I think it's a wonderful concept, and I thought about doing it myself. So I'm not aware of specific restrictions that don't allow you to have people for short periods of time in your own home. Unless you live in Laramie, and on their non-discrimination ordinance, you can only have 3 rooms, I believe it is, and discriminate, but other than that, you can't. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that question is going to come up for Cheyenne, and we're not talking about a non-discrimination ordinance. But even in your private home, it talks about how many rooms that you can rent out to people, and whether or not you can discriminate or not based on the number of rooms, which is just raised my eyebrows when I read their ordinance.
Interesting.
So no, it's I think a great program.
Cool. All right, Mr. Escobar?
No, I think it's a good program. I've always been real high on people's private property rights, and that if there's a way for them to make money on their own home, that should be their right to do that. I was aware that actually during Frontier Days we did actually have quite a few people do Airbnbs with their houses. Talked to one young couple. They made an extra $1,000 that week and bought a new furnace. Well, made a down payment on a furnace. So everybody's got the individual needs out there, and if that's another way that a younger couple just starting out in life can make money, government shouldn't be, getting in their way of doing that.
Right. Mr. Roybal?
I got to tell you, in the, 12, 24, 36, 46 months I've been on council right now, I have never heard a word about an Airbnb. And people will tell you about everything. So I am not aware of any regulations. I'm not even aware of anybody that rented one. So I got nothing.
All right, Dr. Rennie?
I think potentially it needs to be looked at. Nothing had been. I agree with Mr. Roybal. Really, nothing had been just brought up in regard to this for a long time. And I was just trying to look through the city code and see if there was any prohibitions against leasing a room out of your home. I do not think there are. However, we did get a complaint this last summer. Someone in Western Hills had a trailer parked in their driveway, and they were renting that out through Airbnb. And the neighbors complained about that, and I think that's I don't remember what the city's response was, but, I think something like there probably need to be some limitations, because like anything else, it can be abused.
Okay. Anyone need to do a follow-up on that?
I think if it was in the driveway, it probably should have been okay. I don't know what the city decided to do
Well,
about that one.
neighbors didn't like it, and, if they do it in the driveway, they could do it when it's parked on the street, too.
Interesting
So.
topic.
Great. Okay, so the next question from our audience is specifically underlined, so be specific. What is your plan to save heritage buildings in the downtown and other places? Why has council been so weak in this area in the past? And like I said, I'm reading an audience question. I think, Mr. Escobar, I think it's your turn to start.
Specifically, if it's heritage, then I would look at historical preservation grants.
To maintain it or to restore it? Is that?
Both.
Both, okay. Mr. Roybal?
Specifically, my plan is I started in February putting together a plan with leads on the whole hole, and moved that forward to the DDA, where we moved a plan forward to get requests for qualifications and requests for proposals to fill the hole and revamp the Heinz building. We've been working on that for about 8 months now, 9 months. We have some requests for qualifications in. We've had some people respond. My specific plan is to keep pushing this forward until we get that building back in viable and back on the tax rolls.
And Dr. Rennie.
I guess I'd, like to question the questioner. I'm not sure how we've been really weak on that, so maybe afterwards they can give me some examples. On a building that's designated historic, the landowner still has the ability to do what they want with that piece of property. They do have to go through this city's Historic Preservation Board and get approval for demolition if they want to do that. And then that can still end up in court. So we have the controls. I think with the ability that's given it to us, we've implemented whatever controls or whatever incentives we have. Beyond that, again, it's the same thing. I don't know any other alternative other than if we want to purchase those buildings ourselves and then do something with them. But so, like I said, whoever asked that question, if you want to talk to me afterwards and give me a specific, I wouldn't mind talking to them about it.
Great. Ms. Broyles.
Will you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Specifically, what is your plan to save heritage buildings in the downtown and other places?
The Historic Preservation Board is another committee that I had served on several years ago, and we did some incentive things at that. The Bohemian Medal building, I believe, the First United Methodist Church all received awards through the Historic Preservation Board for keeping their historic, the way the facades look and the way things look, that and keeping to pursue that heritage, I guess, is the way to go. I don't believe in tearing down historical buildings unless there's absolutely no other resource, to use that building for. I do believe in keeping them up, and I think, codes should be enforced and things like that to improve the looks of downtown. But just to tear down because it's old or, historic, I believe is the wrong thing to do. We should be incentivizing having those buildings updated and refinished.
Right. Anyone else? 30 seconds follow-up?
Well, may I?
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to say we should have incentives, and it's easy, and if there were a lot of historic preservation grants out there, the Heinz building wouldn't be the issue it's been. So those monies aren't out there, and it's easy to say let's give incentives, but there are only so many incentives we can give that are legal, and it still comes down to, at what point do we get involved, and do we get involved with public dollars? And that's the difficult question.
Great. Audience, if you do have any more questions, please feel free to submit them. What do you see as the biggest issue your ward specifically is facing, and what would you do if elected, or what are you doing to address it? I think we're back to Mr. Roybal.
It's hard to say because there's so many things that come at you in a day. The biggest things I think is just keeping blight down, keeping the west side, the movement there going, and just responding to my constituents. Because what's important to me is not important to one of my constituents. So if it's sewer backup in his house or something like that maybe we caused, to him that's the most important thing right then. And so I think accessibility and the fact that you can come to see me or talk to me or reach me through the office or through personal is paramount in keeping those important things going. So.
Right. Dr. Rennie?
If you talk to the other council members, they always say Ward 2 streets are paved with gold and that we have no problems.
They are.
Yeah, except for the two that are gravel still. Actually, and Ward 2 is fairly healthy. I think, again, keep improving our greenways or expanding where we can. Keeping our streets maintained are things that could help the ward. But most of us on council don't look at, actually all of us that are there currently don't look at our ward only. I think we all do a very good job of looking what's best for the city. And so, again, if the city prospers, we're all going to prosper and our lives are going to be better. So some of it I still kind of circle back to downtown. I think that hurts us. And so I think I'm putting some stress there, improving it. And I know we've all talked about that, but I think, like high tides raise all boats. That I think would help all of us. So.
Right.
Ward 3, I think some of the biggest challenges are the fact that we're the fastest growing area in the city of Cheyenne. And that presents some challenges as well as some wonderful opportunities, making sure that as we grow, that we're using smart growth strategies, that we're planning for infrastructure, that we're planning for parks, for schools, as we continue to move toward the east. We do have quite a dichotomy, I guess, if you will, of different different workers and amounts of money that people would make. And I think that makes for a wonderful ward because you begin to see diversity and you begin to see things from many different perspectives. But it also creates a few challenges, and certain people expect things to be done a certain way. And so I think we need to pay attention and listen to the people, of Ward 3 and making sure that we are addressing their needs and their concerns to the best of our ability. So those, again, the fire stations in that particular area, making sure we have enough police and fire, that are one of my top priorities to address that growth. Also looking at codes and development codes, looking at Plan Cheyenne and the UDC, and seeing that we're moving forward with some of those issues as well. People want to have easier ways of getting permits, and I think we need to be looking at just a multitude of issues in Ward 3. It's a great place to live. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Escobar?
Yeah, Ward 3 is really big. and I used to just go by the size of our old House districts, legislative districts. Ward 3 has about 3.5 House districts in it. Losing a lot of weight walking those streets, hopefully. 3 more weeks to go. But the Christensen Road overpass seems to be one of the biggest issues. People really want to see that finally get done. I believe it's got some legal problems right now that's kind of holding it up. Personally, I think that area needs to have a dog park in it. People shouldn't have to break city ordinance just to run their dogs. They've been taking them to the softball fields and the parks, just letting them run. Because one of the things that's real popular now is the launch that you can get for your dog, and it just takes like a tennis ball or something, and you can launch it way out there, and the dog will run and get it. So we have to take our dog all the way from, it's not that far, but over here to the one by the animal shelter to get him to run. And I don't even think that one is exactly what my vision of a dog park should be. So I would try to get Ward 2 and Ward 1 people to support a dog park in Ward 3.
Great. And we have a couple more audience questions, and we do have some time. So, so sorry, everybody. Okay, I'm going to try to read this. Whoever wrote this question, if I'm reading it wrong, shout it out. But have opportunities been explored or been missed / explored, explored, to work with the state of Wyoming to revitalize historic buildings for, I think it says office space. Yeah. I think we're, Dr. Rennie, is it your turn?
Back to me.
Yeah, I think it's back to you.
It's a great question. I don't know that those opportunities have been explored, and I don't know that they've been missed. I know we all know that with the reconstruction and remodeling of the Capitol and the Herschler building, that the state has leased a lot of office space around the city. But whether there were efforts to try and get them into an existing historic building and whether it would serve their needs, I can't answer that. I do think it's a little difficult with historic buildings. If you look at the Heinz as an example, that was built for business almost 90 years ago, and there's no air conditioning, there's no cabling, there's no fiber optic, and there's no plenum that has 8-foot ceilings, and there's no plenum above those ceilings in order to put that in there. So part of the expense of remodeling that for office use today, which has been almost a prohibitive expense, is that, how do you remodel that building and make the dollars work and make it work for today's business?
Ms. Broyles?
Currently, I do not know what the city council is, doing specifically in addressing that issue, but I just as everybody else knows, I think that Mayor Orr has been working on a program to match people that are wanting to come, to Cheyenne, to some of those buildings, and that I've read, just in what's available through the media. So I'm not real sure what is happening in that arena on the council today. I definitely think it's a great idea, though.
Mr. Escobar?
I guess going back to my time on appropriations, I was one of the few advocates of a state office building going up on a lot of the old Safeway store on Pioneer. And I was surprised about the pushback that we got in our meetings. And it came from the landlords. I started researching that, and the state was making about $700,000 a year on rental space in Cheyenne alone. And when I said the government is not in business to be, funding landlords or renting spaces for landlords to make money, and a lot of them were well-to-do people in the community, bankers and such, but I just don't think that's a business government should be involved in.
Could you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. Have opportunities been missed/explored to work with the state of Wyoming to revitalize historic buildings for office space?
I'm going to have to say this, or agree with Dr. Rennie, is that I have seen nothing specific come across my desk, and not a proposal. I don't think I've even dealt with this in the last 4 years. So I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know.
Anyone else need another 30 seconds?
I would just like to add, when I was campaigning just this weekend, I met a woman who works in the preservation for the state, and a lot of funding has been cut, is what she was explaining to me, to do some of these exact things that you're talking about, and it is quite concerning. But with the budget cuts recently, that is one area that unfortunately has been cut.
Great. One of the things that is no longer on the table, I guess, but I would like your thoughts on, the City Council rejected proposals to implement a charter for compassion, and it is my understanding that there will be a new one on the table in regard to kindness and generosity. What are your thoughts on implementing or voting on, how would you vote, I guess, on those types of proposals? Ms. Broyles, I guess it's your start.
I have not read that proposal, so I'm not real sure how I would respond to that. It definitely sounds wonderful on the surface. I know that reading about it, people have talked about, what other groups are they affiliated with, and what is the real agenda. That doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't support it, because even when Plan Cheyenne came through years ago, people were accused of a conspiracy theory, and it was all, that all Plan Cheyenne was a big conspiracy theory, and that people shouldn't support it, and did not listen. Obviously, at that point, supported that all the way through the process, and continue to support that with revisions as they take place today. So I'd really have to take a look at the charter, take a look at the